the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. How you doing? Rob Barrett's my engineer on the other side of the glass. 'Tis the season for inspiration, and if our first guest, Quentin Super, doesn't do it for you, I really don't know what will. This 22-year-old college student went on spring break in March 2015 north from Minnesota through ice and snow and treacherous conditions on his bike to prove to himself what he was made of. The name of his book, The Long Road North. Quentin, you are crazy.
Exactly.
800 miles. Why?
400 there, 400 back. Honestly, okay, so spring break, right? Everyone goes south, to Mexico, PCB. My buddy and I were like, nope, we're going to defy convention, and we're going to go north. And so we rode our bikes, something that we had been doing for the last year, and we took it as far as we could take it. We tried to max out our abilities. So the Long Road North isn't just about biking. Like, it's so much more than that. It's about the transformations I went through in college, right? Like the loss of identity. So, you go to college and you're one person, and then once you get into college and you experience some different things, right? You have different experiences. You start drinking frequently, you sleep around, and that wasn't like how I was raised. Like, I was raised like by two really good parents who just taught me to be a decent human being, and to, to have fun in the world, but I kind of abused that. And so, it was like, I need to refine my identity. So clearly lost it once I got into school. And for me, that was biking. And it was my buddy, Ryan Brandenburg, who kind of saved me. Not that I was like in perilous danger, but it was like, this guy helped me sort of discover who I am, a different aspect of who I am and what I want to be. And that's why we took this trip. It was an absolutely epic time.
So in the dead of winter, you went from St. Cloud, Minnesota, into Canada, all the way to Winnipeg, turned around and came back. It had to be equally grueling, both physically and mentally, right?
Equal parts, because physically it's like above the knee, that muscle is just absolutely destroyed after about 3-4 days out there. And the lower back for me, that always gave me issues. And so, like, that's the physical part, right? And then having to get up each and every morning when you're exhausted, when it's cold out, and you're just kind of asking yourself mentally, why am I doing this?
I mean, it's downright dangerous what you did. You could have been killed. Those roads had to be horrifying.
Yeah. But to be honest, you could get killed, walking out your house in the morning. And so it's like, do you sit back and think of the things that can go wrong, or do you sit back and you think of the things that can go right? Like, I know on this trip, like, there were times where it's like, we were at one point when we were coming back from Winnipeg, we were by this junkyard, right? And there's 6 or 7 dogs in there, and they just look feral and rabid and like a bad time. And I see them running along the fence parallel to us. I'm thinking nothing of it. Well, I look ahead about 20 feet, and there's a big hole in this fence. And all of a sudden, one by one, these dogs start pouring out, and they're coming for us. Like, and again, we're in northern Minnesota, kind of the middle of nowhere, and I guarantee those dogs didn't just want to be petted. Like, they were coming to sort of like wreak havoc on us. And ultimately we got away, but like, I remember just being so sore, my legs are like, and like, I needed that infusion of adrenaline to to like run away from those dogs, because it was, I don't know, and I almost got bit by a German Shepherd near Bemidji, Minnesota. And it's just crazy. Our first day, like, some like really conservative like dude with a shotgun on the back of his truck, he like tried to run us off the road, and like he turned around and stared at us. And like, I mean, it's just, there's inherent danger in anything you do, and definitely on these bike trips for sure. But it is what it is. I wouldn't trade it for the world. And it was the way back that kind of defined who we were as people. It was going to test us. Like, there wasn't anything romantic about going back to St. Cloud. Like, we had already been there. So being able to go to a place of that nature, to fight through the adversity we had to fight through to get back to St. Cloud. And again, people weren't really cheering us on anymore. It was just kind of like we're returning to normalcy. We are returning to a life we already know. There's nothing exciting about it, as opposed to when you're going to Winnipeg. That, to me, mentally was the most impressive thing, is to fight those last 4 days to get back. And again, just grueling conditions where, there's the motivation really isn't there. It's like, we've already been to Winnipeg. Like, the fun has been had. Now we're just getting back because we got to go to school on Monday, kind of thing. So it was it was just an arduous journey, but one that helped me in so many ways to sort of refine my identity, to find out who am I as a person? Can I persevere through trials and tribulations in life, or am I the type of person who's going to mail it in? And clearly, I like to persevere.
So you prove to yourself what you're made of.
Exactly. Yeah, it's crazy, really, what the human body can do, the human mind at that, when you really push yourself, when you don't put limits. Because, when I was in school, like I was just working at UPS, unloading trucks. I was like, oh, like this will probably be my life. I'll be a UPS driver and I'll have a college degree and hopefully I'll find a wife. But then once I sort of expanded that comfort zone and tried to find different things to do, it's crazy the immense possibilities one can do in one lifetime.
Are you out talking to people about this? Are you doing a book
Yeah,
tour? What are you
I
doing?
had a mini book tour in Minnesota back in September. We went to St. Cloud, the Barnes and Noble there. Went to the one in Maple Grove, which is where I grew up. And then in Minneapolis, I went to a bookstore there. And so I've been out spreading the word. I created like a tour recap video, me and my team, and that's really cool. That's available on YouTube. Currently in the process of trying to move to China right now to see if I can get my book into a different language, to see if like there's a market out there for my story. I don't think my story appeals to just a Western or American audience. I think anyone who's been through some changes in their life can relate to the long road north.
Couldn't agree more, Quentin. Thank you so much. So let's talk some more about choices and how you live with them. Norm Chapin is a retired cop from the Bay Area and says he knows all about that. His book is his life story. It's entitled When the Hammer Drops.
It's about real police work. It's about the choices that police officers make and how those choices can affect our family and our loved ones. The most important thing of the story is how God worked in my life, and how at a young age I didn't really know quite how to listen, even though I was a Christian. And I think as my career progressed, God spoke a little louder, perhaps winked at me a few times, and the story kind of comes all together in the final chapter when it presented. By just the title alone, When the Hammer Drops, it speaks of dropping the hammer on someone or an officer involved shooting. In my particular case, I was fortunate enough or blessed enough to survive 3 ambushes. Unfortunately, there were some officers who were shot during one of those occasions. But let's just say there were some things that presented themselves to me that not only could I not believe, but I think it might be difficult for the reader to believe until the end of the story.
Okay.
It involves criminal activity by our criminal element, as well as our criminal street gangs. And I was the co-creator of a 10-officer gang and narcotics task force, which was a special investigations unit. And all we did was gangs and narcotics and gang warfare. We were called jackbooted thugs. We certainly cleaned the streets up. And I thought it was most important that the readers see what the life of a police officer is really like. Most importantly, those who have chosen to live by the law enforcement code of ethics, those honest individuals. And I can tell you quite honestly that myself, as well as many, many people that I worked with, we never felt like we worked a day in our lives. We enjoyed the work so much. And it was a sincere pleasure. And my career was 26 years long. And I loved every day of it.
You're so lucky, Norm. You know not many people can say that. Real quick, before I let you go, you really followed up with the marketing and everything with Paige. I just want you to talk about that real quick.
Well, the publishing company has sent out, I believe, about 5,000 press releases. I have done book signings in Colorado. I've done them in Utah. I just returned home from my California coastal tour, where I hit 5 cities in 7 days. And I do readings and signings. I'm finding the dates based on leads that the publishing company has given me. It's bookstores, coffee shops in the Treasure Valley area in Idaho, and I'm just waiting to hear back from them. I have a book signing scheduled, I believe, in March at the Barnes & Noble in Boise, Idaho.
You're basically just following up on what the publisher's doing.
Yes, I am.
That's great. You have no idea how difficult that is for so many of our writers. I talk to so many writers and they just don't know what to do. And really, the publisher's sending stuff out there, follow it up, and they can do what you're doing. Christopher J. Pennington started writing when he was 24 years old, and he's been writing off and on for the last 25 years. He's also a retired cop from Mesquite, Texas, and now has time to think. He's written 3 books, 2 of them published by Page, and the first one entitled Masters and Bastards. What got you started on this?
When I was a child attending theme parks, walking through these amusement parks that were themed to look like one country to the next nation. Particularly, a lot of them were from times in the past, colonial periods in American history. I was just captivated by that. And again, the theme element, not the thrill ride element. And I remember thinking that one day I would like to create a story that takes place in an environment like that. And I would like that world to be a place where modernity coexists with antiquity, but not in some artificial or contrived or shoehorned manner, but in something that wasn't so clunky, but smoothly fit together and came across as true to life.
All right, so now we have Masters and Bastards. Catchy title, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much.
Masters and Bastards.
I thought it would hopefully catch the reader's attention, but it was also pertinent to the story I was telling. It pertains to illegitimate children in this feudal society, but also the more crass or vulgar meaning of the word as well. So the master's element is people in power, and the bastard's element has to do with people that are in power that happen to be from illegitimate backgrounds without both of their parents married, and some of the obstacles they have to overcome regarding that. The story is you have this legionary in another solar system long after the extinction of mankind. And not to segue too much into this, but mankind has been extinct for thousands of years, and prior to the extinction of mankind, the powerful nations of Earth got together, built an ark to save human DNA and the DNA of all the species that have ever lived on Earth that they could collect, and sent them into outer space. I think it was Stephen Hawkins that just this year said that man has less than 1,000 years to leave the Earth, and obviously we're nowhere close to having the technology to achieve light speed or deep spaces for sustaining human life. So DNA would be the most logical choice to send in space if we wanted to save the human race. And so on this planet where mankind is ultimately resurrected back to life by this benevolent, mysterious species of aliens that are far more advanced than ourselves, this planet is named the planet of Poltervacht. Human history begins to repeat itself as archives of human history and language and culture have been loaded aboard this ark and downloaded and instilled into the human species. And so this legionary on one of the more powerful nations on this planet, known as Iberia, which I've taken this name out of history to make the names more recognizable and not so artificial sounding, begins to understand that his identity is not what he thought it was, and it's a search for his identity in the process of trying to save the human race from an imminent alien invasion of a non-human species that have realized that there's a remnant of mankind that possess enormous telepathic capacity, and that has become the most valuable resource in the galaxy because it allows an imperial power, an intergalactic power, to communicate with itself and its various planets and various star systems at the speed of thought as opposed to the speed of light, which is much, much slower.
Man, this is intricate to say the least.
But I like to think that there's a simplicity in the levels where it needs to be. And I've attempted to write this story in a way that it doesn't come across as so highbrow that only certain people feel like they can understand it. I've tried to simplify it in ways to make it something that's easily consumable by the typical reader.
All right, Christopher, we have to take a short break. Coming up, cyber insecurity and what we can do about that. Don't you go anywhere. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you. Printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-204-6099 for your free author submission kit.
We're back on the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Cyber Insecurity is the name of a book by Benoit Morel. He has an extensive background in military high technology along with security, arms control. Dr. Morel is on the faculty of Carnegie Mellon University. He went to Stanford as a science fellow in arms control, and this book is a culmination of his research on cyber attacks, hacking, and what we need to do to protect ourselves. Dr. Morel.
If you want to, in a nutshell, thing what it says is that we have a threat which is growing, which is as the attribute you say, and more because the financial sector also is being affected, and the potential critical infrastructures and everything. And as you say, we in the United States, but it's not a monopoly in the United States of that. We are not the whole wide world exactly confronting this threat. The hackers, as you call them, are playing an absolutely central role. But this is not only a bad role, by the way, but obviously nothing. The hackers are the best experts. All the crimes and so on are made possible, the cyber crimes made possible by hackers, and sometimes often made by hackers themselves. But the hackers are also those who invented the field of cybersecurity and are the best experts in the sense that a typical hacker is a guy who takes a complex system and tries to make it do something it should not do. And our systems now are so complicated that it is impossible to avoid that they succeed. We have all sorts of hackers, a big place, these hackers. And some of them are really impressive, in fact. And some of them are less so, because they're also mediocre. They're excited more than they really do things. The others are potentially criminals. But they also use the fact that, as we speak now, law enforcement and the defense, the protection we should get from the government doesn't work. Because by and large, FBI, DHS, all these agencies, departments we rely on to protect ourselves are completely outsmarted by what goes on. And even academia, which I come from, is not exactly contributing as much as it should. So that book is also a way to alert people. You want to get informed about cybersecurity. In fact, join more the community of hackers and the kind of blogs they have and so on. Then you will understand there's a culture there. And this culture is outsmarting all of us. But the bottom line is it leads to the situation I described. You cannot rely on anything in our world today. The elections, or soon the power grid, when you make a financial transaction, or you try to get a ticket to go to an airplane. Consider the important messages. One, cybersecurity is potentially the most complex threat in our world. Second, it is totally man-made. There's nothing else than human beings involved there. Third, it is out of control. And that's one of the situations that is a bit unprecedented. And it's out of control partially because the funny thing is about cybersecurity that those who drive the progress of this field, which is evolving very fast, the so-called hackers, are not exactly people who find in universities or let alone in the government and elsewhere. They are self-taught people, and they are from all over the world. The United States is a target. It's not the only target, but let me tell you, a crucial target. But the people attacking us come from China, from India, or not India so much, from China and Russia in particular, and sometimes the rest of the eastern part of Europe. These are probably the hotspots. I would also say, an important thing is, in the United States, the government is very, very outsmarted, except one agency, called National Security Agency. It's just an island of expertise in the ocean of lack thereof. You see. And there's a reason for that. There was an individual, or two in fact, there are two heads of NSA, General Hayden and after that General Keith Alexander, who understood the culture of cybersecurity and recruited people who were very good at it. And they are contrast with the rest when people, they progress extremely slowly and not fast enough compared to the speed at which this so-called cyber threat involved. The government, as a rule, are very bad at cybersecurity, by the way. The United States had the church of NSA, but the luck of NSA. But there is also Israel as a very good institution called 8200 units. And in fact, NSA and 8200, they cooperate together. This is also something you can try to say. There is a kind of the hotspot. And then when you come to Kaspersky, which is very hot these days, Kaspersky is based in New York, in Moscow. It's the best security company there is. But they are at war, totally at war with 8200 units in Israel and NSA in the United States because they reveal their secrets. But not because they work for the Russian government, because of the culture of cybersecurity, of the hackers community they speak to. That is something which is so poorly understood, you see. The hackers community is a much more interesting lives than people think, and what you find, it's not at all ugly. Quite the opposite. They are very impressive, some of those guys.
Right.
And so the interface we have developed so far with them is not good enough. I think the lawmakers should really learn to familiarize themselves with that culture instead of continuing their pattern, which is to utter platitudes or inanities. We need new laws, but the laws has to be based on knowledge. What they come with laws is worse than no law at all. But we need laws. The cyber crime is a different kind of crime than what we had before. We need to protect the regiment. Us, we rely on computers far better against all these.
Dr. Morell, this is the stuff you need. We need a whole show to talk about this. But you know what? I think you should send a copy of your book to every member of Congress so they can get a complete understanding of the international threat that we're facing. Thank you so much. Systemic racism and slavery as we know it today. This is the subject of Charles Guy's book entitled From Plantation to Heaven. And Charles, this story begins with your family.
It's going back to the 1800s where my great-grandfather was actually sold into slavery. So I thought putting my family as heading of the book would sustain the other information that I needed to also include in the book based around the hardships of other families. I am 68 years old myself. My mother is 80, be 88. He talks a lot about the old times and her experience, what she had been through. It's talking about the hardship of families and starting with particularly my family, because the book talks about slavery and actually post-slavery, which using my family, it was sustained in my story. I started working when I was about 7 years old, and it happened until probably about 15 at the time where I got old enough to know that there was something better somewhere and started, preparing to leave there.
You worked until you were about 14 or 15, literally in the cotton fields, until you
Absolutely.
were able to leave.
Well, I left there with my uncle and went to school. And after that, my mom, the other family moved back to Mississippi.
So they were so used to working in the cotton fields that they ended up going back.
Absolutely. Now, slavery has transformed itself in just a different form instead of actually abolishing it. Let's take, for instance, Mississippi, all right? Mississippi actually didn't sign their bill, the 13th Amendment, until 2013. So that means all that time, you could consider that still slavery existed in Mississippi, all right? But they were just one of the ones that didn't mind it being known. So if you look at systemic racism, this is what I want the public to look at, the systemic racism that exists today, where there is disfranchised. They are first hired. They're the last hired. The first fired. Blacks can't even get into their automobiles safely and make it back home. So some of the things that I am concerned about, these institutional ills that the United States faces, and I believe that, American people could do something about it. I mentioned a post-traumatic slavery counseling where all Americans could benefit, because there is a problem that we need to talk about. We need to talk about racism and classism. So if the public doesn't get anything else, this is my main point.
A point well taken. Thank you, Charles. Finally, Erin Cummings tackles a bad marriage, domestic abuse, and a sexy stranger in her first book entitled Then Came You. Erin.
I've been reading, romance and erotic romance novels for probably 5 years, and I just put a book down one day and I thought, I bet I could write one of these. So I just kind of started taking off, and I've got 3 younger sisters who are all more outspoken and more daring than I am. So a lot of my characters based on, characteristics of them, maybe like what I wish I would be more like. But a girl named Jo, she has moved from one town to the next, just kind of to start her life over. And she's found a nice group of friends at work. She loves her single life. She loves being on her own. And then just out of the blue, she runs into this handsome stranger at a grocery store, and she decides that maybe she's missing something in her life. There are some twists and turns because she second guesses, is this really what she wants to do, is tackle a new romance, or can she survive, life on her own? Her ex does come back and make an appearance and gives her a little bit of trouble.
So are you going to keep writing? Is this book end here, or does it go on?
No, I would love to keep writing. I have a second book already finished. I'm just waiting kind of to see what the feedback was from the first one. The second one kind of has some reoccurring characters. It involves, Cam, the main character in this story, his brother. And then I have a third one that I would like to do, again, with just someone from this story as well. Some of my favorite books kind of have that. They're family members or, friends, and you have these fun reoccurring characters, and you can see those relationships kind of develop from story to story, and kind of the area, the direction I'd like to go.
All right, Erin, thank you so much. We are out of time. Thanks to all of our authors who joined us tonight. And don't forget, you can download the Page Publishing Book Club anytime you want at 710WOR.iHeart.com. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Take it easy, Rob. See you next time.